Grimmfest.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Friday at Grimmfest, ahead of the world premiere of Landlord, and I'm here with the director, Remington Smith. Please introduce your film a little bit.
Hi, so I'm Remington. I wrote, directed, and produced this movie. It's my first feature. And so it's a vampire movie, and it's a different approach to vampires. So it's about this black bounty hunter who moves into this apartment complex, but then finds herself forced to protect this orphan kid from the white vampire landlord. And so the general idea was, if vampires can't come into your house without being invited in, well, what happens if they own your housing? Then they can come and go as they please. And so this vampire in our movie is kind of using this apartment complex as his own private chicken coop. So, yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there is certainly a subtext and a context to all of this. And my favorite moment of that is when the kind of like the heavy character is dismembering a body and he just has a little taste.
Yeah, it was interesting developing the characters because as filmmakers, I feel like the biggest hurdle I've heard and experienced myself is like, how do you develop the second act? Like, you know what's going to happen in the beginning, you know what's going to happen at the end, and then what's happening in the middle, and to really shore up who are the baddies and making them into real characters though, and not just empty villains. And so I was really inspired by movies like Romero's original Dawn of the Dead, where you can say something about the world as you see it and as you've experienced it. But you also don't have to be didactic in it. You don't have to say what your theme is. Hopefully it's something that after the movie is over and people are doing that conversation in the lobby, they're putting some of those pieces together. And so you can engage with it at that level, or, you could just watch this and be like, oh, this is a different take on vampires I haven't seen done before.
And I really appreciate the craft that exists in that. Like, to me, horror films are a roller coaster ride. There's no harm in being there just for the screams, and there are some glorious examples of screams. But what I enjoy about horror is the tension and the build. And I think the kind of the muted color palette that you show is reminiscent of some of those kind of mid-80s, early 90s slower horror films where they're not showing stuff because they're not allowed, and it's what you don't see that is the jumps, I guess.
Yeah, I enjoy like a good jump scare, but that's just not the way that I've been making horror movies. Like the first shorts that I did were, the first one that I did was just like friends running around as neighborhood watch units in a zombie short. And so much of it was just like, I just want to tell a story and not really fixated on like, what are some gags? It's just like what organically is going to come out through the storytelling. And so some of the movies that were inspiring this, I realize in hindsight, there's just a deliberate pacing where it's just going to breathe, and then occasionally things are going to pop off. But like John Carpenter's The Fog, Ghost Dog by Jim Jarmusch was a big lodestar, and then something like Fish Tank. So there's going to be some meditative quality, and then hopefully we also deliver on then some more spectacular things as you kind of move on, similar to Fright Night too. And in Fright Night, the first act of that is just kind of setting up this neighbor who's moved in next door. Is he, isn't he, and then like, oh dang, okay, he is a vampire. So being deliberate in how we're going to dole things out. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that there's a lot of cinematic shorthand in there. Like, they're a vampire. It's not an original monster that you need to spend 10, 15 minutes explaining the rules on. Everyone knows what a vampire is, which I think allows you to get to say something other than it's just a vampire story, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was hoping for, and operating from is, like we kind of know what the rules are. There was a point where I did want to make sure that we did clarify things, but I was actually looking at, I was rewatching the first season of Stranger Things, and I was rewatching the Terminator. And in the Terminator, they wait until the midpoint of the whole movie to explain to the audience and Sarah Connor what the Terminator is and make sure that you've defined the contours of the world so that the audience feels like, okay, this is where I can hang my hat. So similarly, it was interesting to clarify some things at a later point in the movie to make sure like these are the rules for our vampire world, but we're also we're not going to belabor it. And so it was it's so funny. I didn't know I'd end up making a vampire movie, but it now in hindsight it seems, of course I would, because some of the first movies I remember seeing as a kid, it's like the Monster Squad, you know, where kids versus Dracula, Fright Night, The Lost Boys. Vampires have just constantly been something that I've been exposed to and enjoyed. So, of course, I would make a vampire movie, Remington. Like, why would you think you wouldn't? So, yeah.
I don't think any story can really exist without its characters. And another thing I found really interesting that I enjoyed was that the central relationship between the bounty hunter and the orphan, they weren't buddies. It wasn't you were writing easy dialogue. They were antagonistic but with similar goals. How much of a challenge was that? And how much of a challenge was that on set to create that chemistry?
Yeah, from the writing process, I'm the oldest of four, and I also just know how siblings quibble, and then how the relationship dynamics differ. I was thinking for our bounty hunter that it's not about like a surrogate mother in the way that Ripley was in Aliens to Newt. It was more like maybe an aunt that is really annoyed with her nephew, or like an older sister really annoyed with her younger brother. And so, fortunately, in the casting, our lead, Adama Abramson, her and Cohen Cooper, who plays Alex, the boy that kind of falls under her wing, they immediately had that dynamic. Like I would have the headphones on, listening to their mics as we're setting up for a shot, and like Cohen is just annoying and pestering Adama, and she's getting a laugh and is like, "You're being silly, like quit, we need to focus up." Or she would then tease him. And so fortunately in the casting process we really it just clicked in the way that we were going for. And part of that also was in the conversations with them of like, when I wrote it, this is the dynamic that I'm thinking of, and they just nailed it. So
How much of that do you think was settled in the casting process? Like the people you picked were always going to do that, opposed to it was something that happened almost by happenstance?
I mean, I think that adage that directing is 90% of casting is very true. You're trying to find people that are as close to this as possible and have the same kind of energy and hopefully the same kind of communication style. I'm a talker. I like to kind of talk things out. And so it was very evident from the tape that Cohen sent that he was already there. And I told him what maybe some of the references were. And so he dialed into it. And then with Adama, it was a very similar process. But fortunately, I also had the chance, like, she did 2 auditions. And then just if she's going to be our lead, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with her in advance. And fortunately, we both lived in the same city. So I was like, let's just go on a walk. And so we went on a walk to the top of this overlook, and we just did a walk and talk for an hour. And I was like, okay, I think we get along well. I think you get it. And then it turned out like her backstory was lining up with half of the stuff I already written for the character. I was just like, perfect, you know. There, so it really did come down to the casting, and then God bless him, William McKinney just killed it as the vampire in our movie. Character's name is John, and he really got that we were going for something that was a little more of an uncanny vampire, not somebody who's like exerting a lot of energy to be threatening. Because for that character's bio, he's been around for a couple of centuries. He doesn't have to.
It gives me the old man from Poltergeist. Poltergeist 2?
Oh, yeah. For me, I used to be a history major. And so when I was in a jam and I was trying to figure out who this character was, I was like, let's just do a character bio. And then I was drawing on my American history knowledge to be like, where is he at different points? And then who is he, and what kinds of decisions is he making as he's moving out west as the United States expands? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, perfect. I know who this character is. And then something I never thought anybody would see, it was just for me, then I was doling those out to the actors. And so I also think that the prep and giving these references, these bios to the actors, then really made sure that everyone knew what is the world. And then fortunately, they were all on the same page once we got to set. So fortunately, it was very smooth sailing when it came to actually shooting it.
It sounds like you had an awful lot of creative freedom and the trust of your backers, partners, however you want to phrase that.
Yeah, since this movie was completely independently produced and financed, that everyone was on board. And I think part of it is just, have you done enough shorts to make people feel good about it? Have you workshopped the script to death to feel like it's in a good place? And then just, have you done enough prep? And have you been kind enough and excited enough that people, in some ways, they're not investing in the movie, they're investing in you. They're investing in, well, he's done this much. And so I'm very blessed that we have the community that we do in Louisville, Kentucky, to be able to do something like this. And there's no way we could have made this anywhere else, because we took over a fully functional apartment complex with 4 buildings for like 3 weeks. There was also this bingo hall out in the parking lot that was perfect as a holding place for all our cast and crew. And so there's no way we could have done that in New York or LA with the small budget that we had. But because we're local, because we were from the area, they were willing to help us out. And so it's even more proof that you don't need to necessarily flee to the coast or go to a bigger city to make a movie. Sometimes working with the community and the resources that are in your community, you're going to maybe get a little bit further than other people.
Uh, does that limit your ceiling being completely independent, that you've now had all this creative freedom and now you need to bundle that up to distributors, to whoever?
I don't think so, because I think one way or another, you independently making something, and especially if you workshopped it to death, and that's not to say you take everybody's note and then it becomes a movie by committee, but it's just like, try it on a general audience. How does it work? How is it not working? Revise, revise, revise. I just, like, writing is rewriting. I found it's very similar in the edit, where you're getting a sense of like, how does it land for an audience versus like how you're interpreting it. And then I think by that end of that whole process, then you have something that's going to be unique. Like, if you really vetted it and you're not just basing it on algorithmic models based on studio notes that may be off kilter. Because part of the reason that I came up with this idea in the first place is I just hadn't seen a story like this done before. And so I still haven't seen a vampire movie approached in this exact way. And so I think that that is just going to make it be unique. I mean, I will say I was thinking that our movie is a bit of a dramatic horror, and it might be similar to some of the struggles that, like, I heard that Blood Simple, it was very difficult for them to find distribution because the Coen brothers in an oral history said like they weren't sleazy enough for like the most genre grindhousey outlets, and then they weren't art house enough. And so, like, our movie is very similar, and it's gonna, I think it's gonna find its audience one way or another. So
I think we've been a little bit serious. So I think the last thing I'm going to ask you is,
yeah.
tell me a moment of unexpected joy you found on set.
um Unexpected joy, because I was also the lead producer. I had to remind myself to try and find that. My co-producers kept us moving, Maddie Weiner and Abby Van Andel, so God bless them. But unexpected joy, I think some of the quieter scenes that have been audience favorites as we've tested it, to be, imagining the shot order of this movie that you're eventually going to shoot years from now, to be in that room, to be in that space, and to actually shoot it. And these were the things that I think were the heart and soul of the movie, away from big special effects moments. It felt like a holy moment to finally shoot those things, to have the time to do it. We shot for 25 days, even though we had like a shoestring budget. So we had the time to do this stuff right. And so to have this quiet and this calm and shoot like this motel night exchange between Alex, this orphan kid, and then Adama playing our bounty hunter. It's a quiet scene, but it reminded me of all of these sleepovers I had as a kid. And to shoot it finally, on the one hand, it was so happy, but then they were so elegant in their simplicity that it's like moving on. It's like, wait, I want to hold on to this moment a little bit longer. Similarly, with a scene with the vampire and a projection on 16 millimeter, there was just like these quiet moments where I had to be like, okay, we're doing it. Like the pieces that everyone really loved in the script, we're finally now shooting it. It was kind of crazy.
Was that archive or simulated 16mm, or did you get to go and have a little play?
We did real 16 millimeter for that. It was the most expensive. It might have been one of the more expensive props that we had to do. So I was like trying to find somebody who could shoot this sunrise, and we scouted it and then shot it. And then we hired a 16 millimeter projectionist to come on set and then just be our projectionist to play it back. And so playing with some of those analog toys was really fun. And there was like one night shoot too where I had to remind myself, like I said a little prayer of thanks. I was like, high school me could not imagine having like, there are difficulties making a movie, but it's just like, thank you for these difficulties. Like, thank you for this crazy opportunity to be out in the field in the middle of nowhere shooting a feature movie. Like, there's a lot going on and I'm really stressed out, but like, this is really crazy to be here in this moment. I'm very fortunate. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Remington.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.